Welcome. We are going to be talking about nervous system and using Clive Wearing as a case study. Now, Parker says that there is no single memory center in the brain. Network of every areas of the brain make a memory possible. So if you want to have memory of anything at all, every part of your brain stores its own memory that is peculiar to them. Now, Clive Wearing, the man with 7 seconds memory, according to Deborah, his wife, he has the worst case of amnesia ever known. And this is because he could not retain in his memory present discussion or event. And then he's a man who lives in the present moment and no recollection of the past, nothing at all. Why is this the case? Now, is that there are so many parts of our brain that is responsible for different activities that we take or that we undertake every single day. Parker says again that there is no single memory center. Now, brain can be divided into different parts. The frontal lobe, as we see right in front here, the red area, the parietal lobe, which is the top, the green area there, the occipital lobe, which is the back of the brain, which controls the eye, the information from the eye goes there. And then also the temporal lobe, which is on the side. And whatever you see on this side is also on the other side. There are 2 layers of it. Now, all these different areas, they have their own different function. Now, in Clive's case, there are these temporal lobes, the yellow area there, may have suffered some bit of damage because that area controls speech, and then also it has a huge role to play in our memory storage. So in Clive, it suffered damage because he's not able to remember any event at all. Now, Penfield and Roberts once said that when a patient who is in surgery, when that part of their brain is stimulated, surely they remember long forgotten events so clearly. Now, in fact, the fact that he was not able to remember what happened or what their relative would be doing in New Zealand, what got the wife worried because he's not able to make that connection of what happened in the past at all. So in Clive too, thalamus is somewhere inside that yellow area, right there, deep inside. The thalamus there has suffered some damage as well in Clive, and because that particular area process every incoming information and relay, it's like a relay station. It relays them to other parts of the brain. The occipital, if it's coming from the eye, and it goes to the back of the brain. And then if it's coming from the senses, it goes to the parietal lobe at the top. And if it's something that has to be stored and for storage, for thinking, it goes right to the frontal lobe. And then also the cerebellum has to do with the balance of every human person. So that is the job of that area. Now, thalamus in Clive has suffered some damage because it's not able to relay the information to the cognitive area, which is in the front, to retain that memory for future reference. So also in Clive, the hippocampus may be damaged. And according to Kushner, this hippocampus is responsible for formation of new memories, and to consolidate that memory, it has to move from one part to the next stage. So when it's able to successfully move into the next stage, then this memory is consolidated. You are talking of moving from short-term memory into the long-term memory and vice versa. So it comes back again. But because Clive was not able to move into that next stage, yes, the whole thing is destroyed and he suffers severe amnesia. So that's what happened in his case. Now, the other area, amygdala is still right inside. The whole of that inside the area is called the limbic area, which has to do with relay area. Amygdala is also situated right there and is a little bit above hippocampus and equally impaired. So this little area is responsible for emotion and drives and the ability to recall strong emotions and associate powerful events in the past. So just to be able to put them together and make a sense out of them. Clive is not aware at all that he plays piano. And he's not even aware that he once controlled a stage at all. He's not aware of all of that. And yet he's there because all those memories could not be connected at all. So that, yes, one single event can be made out of them. Now we go to that's all this area. Now we go to the next stage, which is the differences between the central nervous system, peripheral, and autonomic nervous system. The central nervous system, the CNS, consists of the spinal cord, the peripheral nervous system, and the brain. So all those three areas are linked together. Now, the CNS, the central nervous system, in the spinal cord are grouped into bundles called tracts. And tracts take information to the brain and back to the skeletal muscles. So the information go from our spinal cord over to the brain stem, right at the back here, and into the brain. And then the brain sends another signal back through that means or some other means to the body, to the skeletal muscle. Clive's sensory receptor and neurons can be impaired. So they send no information to the brain or receive information from the brain at all. So reasons he was not able to feel himself playing the piano at all. Peripheral nervous system located at the sensory receptor area connected to the nerve center of the CNS, of the central nervous system. This peripheral nervous system can be found right below our spinal cord, right at the bottom of it there. And then, so they collect information from the senses and then relay them to the spinal cord, which goes there from there into the brain. So they collect sensory messages from internal organs and spinal cord and to spinal cord and to the brain. So motor neurons carry back responses from the brain to specific muscles or glands in the body. Clive does not feel the piano because those informations were not coming back. So he was not getting any enthusiasm, the joy from playing those things at all. So that is a big problem. Now, to the next stage. The autonomic nervous system controls the involuntary actions in the body, such as heartbeat and the organs in the body. So it uses nerve center buried inside the walls of the internal organs to carry information out. So, and then also it functions in two forms, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic forms, which operate on opposite direction. Now, so sympathetic forms sees a danger coming and it triggers our heart beat and even the stomach, the abdomen, every part of the body is triggered, and then we begin to have palpitation and the rest of them. So in us, it triggers this awareness of fight, the danger, or flight from it. So, and then when the danger is gone, the other part, the parasympathetic, begins to cool us down. Everything begins to come down to normal, temperature back to where it was, and everything is okay. So that's how that works. And so the differences between glial cells and neurons, nervous tissue has two main parts, neurons and neuroglia. Neuroglia, called glial cells, are connective cells, much smaller and numerous than neurons. There are billions of them inside of you, and so their job is just to provide support and nourishment for neurons happening. So, and then, but neurons have three basic structures. The cell, which is, the photo is from Wikipedia. The cell is right there in the middle, and then the axon is the long stretch that is bent in the middle, and then the dendrites. The dendrites are the branches that you see at the top there. So this is the terminal buttons at the bottom here. So that is how it's lined up inside the body, different forms like that. But between this, then the terminal buttons here and the next dendrites, there is 0.005 millimeter gap. So it's not touching at all. So to allow that neurons to fire on. So we'll come back to it later. Neurons could be spelled that way or the other way, are specialized cells that carry out very important function in the body. So they transmit impulses from the sensory organs to spinal cord and the brain. So from the brain, also they carry information from the brain to the organs or tissue for actions. So, and that actions can also come from the tissue, and you see reflex actions coming. It goes to the brain, and the brain, so the brain can suspend or suppress whatever action the reflex is going to take, because if it knows that it's going to cause more dangers, it will suppress it. So all those actions, sometimes it doesn't pass through the spinal cord, it goes directly straight on. Now, though Clive was able to play piano, but he wasn't able to feel it at all. Now, the process of communication between neurons, now through electrical impulses and chemical substances, which is called neurotransmission, and that is how neurons communicate from one to the other. One neuron sends information to the next, and then the next neuron pick up that information from the synaptic gap that I mentioned earlier. We'll go back to it, and then fires on to the next stage, and then keep transmitting that information until it gets to the brain, and then back as well. Now, Clive's synaptic gap may be faulty. His chemical substance too may be weak to cross the synaptic gap. Now, I will go back to where we were before. Now, as I said, there was a small gap in between them. So, and the chemical that is coming, the neuron that is sending this information is like just a mist that you see dropping like that, very tiny, minute mist. Because they don't touch, so it has to have enough power to cross over and join the dendrites from this side, and then before the dendrite will fire that information, take it away from there into the next stage. So that is their job. But if it's not able to join and to come into the dendrites here, then it falls. So, and the information is lost. And that is what is happening in the case of Clive. So the information does now cross that place. It doesn't get to the next stage. And that is why he's no longer able to have a long-term memory, hence the amnesia that he suffered so much. So, now 3 neurotransmitters in relation to the behavior they influence. I think the very first, the neurotransmitters either stimulate or an action or inhibit an impulse. So that is how they work. So when we look at the glutamate has its own job, and the job of glutamate is responsible for cognition, the learning and memory in the system. So the large deposit of this glutamate in the brain can lead to seizure and some other problem. Clive may have a high deposit of glutamate, which affects his cognition or cognitive state and loss of memory in his case. And dopamine, as we see in that place. So then dopamine is another one which is linked to movement in the body. And as world psychologists said, dopamine plays a critical role in the way the brain control movement and attention in human beings. So a high amount of it in the system can lead to problem, and low amount of it also has problem. So dopamine has also been associated with heightened arousal of alertness. So in that case, Clive alertness is so, in the video, is so heightened that he jumps up. Before even the wife opens the door, he's already up. And so that is a problem of high deposit of dopamine in the system. And then there is also serotonin, which is also a neurotransmitter which controls the hormones for stress in the body. So Clive may have a high deposit of serotonin, and because he was often times restless and looked frustrated and stressed at the doctor's lack of progress in his case. So all these things added to his problem. So we come in conclusion, human brain is a network machine. CNS and PNS plays a huge role in this network. Clive amnesia is a result of damage to some system in the brain. His neurons and motor neurons not firing properly. Neurotransmitters stimulate or inhibit actions, and combination of these could be used to help Clive. So thank you very much for listening. Bye.